Dear friend, Namaste once again. We are on the path of self discovery. You have been doing good. The goal of the Eastern wisdom is nothing but the self discovery to know my true nature. And then we replace the ego with that real nature, and then we start working and living in day to day life. We cannot do without thought, speech, and action. We have to think, we have to speak, we have to act in our daily life. But how the thoughts, feeling, speaking, and action should undergo a change in life so that that ego sense should not enter into our life. There is a ripe ego and there is a unripe ego. So when there is a ripe ego, my friend, that ripe ego moves with the humility, clarity, in thought, in speech, in action, in daily working. And the unripe ego attaches itself to wealth, position, pleasure, and then it creates a problem in our life. So, as discussed earlier, we'll go a little deeper. To brief it, what we discussed, there are 4 steps. First is, I do not know, let me know it. What I do not know. That is the basic step. Because I have been living my life for days after days, weeks after weeks, months after months, years after years, with the same old habit, with the instinctive demands, with impulsiveness, with habit. So we have accumulated millions and trillions of those thoughts and the impressions, and they trigger us. Ego takes the shape. Ego always worship attachment and detachment. And we have accumulated trillions of those impressions. So you see that ego worships attachment and detachment, and then comes desire. And what is that desire? Desire to seek something in the life to fulfill our desires to secure happiness, to secure happiness. That is what is the pattern. So now go back to the first step. I do not know, let me know it. And that is why we should gain knowledge of the Eastern wisdom that helps us to make the unripe ego the ripe one. Solution is there, but that is only the first step. As long as we are keeping that unripe ego seeking something from outside with an attachment and detachment, it will not happen. That is why the right knowledge is required. Second step is we have to understand that Why to understand? I do not understand, so let me understand. To understand with a conviction, clarity, doubt free knowledge. So once we understand it's a doubt free knowledge, so the intellect inspires the mind constantly to live into that state. And that is our third step. Third step is I do not experience, so let me practice and experience. And the fourth step is even after years of the practice, I do not change. Why I do not change? Because those accumulated impressions in the mind triggers us to go for the same old routine, habit, action. It's a different thing that later on I realize, I repent, and then again I go back and start living my life and I become the same person. That was your question. I know, I understand, but still, I did the practice and my mind was clear and something triggered from deep inside. No doubt, the factor is outside of a trigger, but the impression is already there in the mind. If you don't have a reaction in the mind, how can you react? If the thoughts is not supporting the ego that is present in your mind, how can you have an egoistic attitude? So, first step, I do not know, let me know it again. And today I will give you the 4 tips that you should remember all the time and apply it. And I will also give you the ground where to apply and enjoy your life from today. So the first 2 steps, I do not know, let me know it, and I do not understand, let me understand it. So when we have a total clarity about these steps, then what happens? The knowledge enters into your head with a clarity and conviction. Then it goes down into your heart, seat of desire and the emotion. So the positive emotions are taken by the clarity and the conviction, then it goes down in action, in thought, in speech, in action. Means the knowledge learned must descend from the head to the heart and from the heart to the hands. Then the life becomes beautiful. Condition is that we should allow that knowledge to go inside the heart. And that condition is met by the clarity and clear understanding with a conviction of what we are learning. So, go back, look at the sense organs. I am speaking the tongue as a sense organ and the motor organ. Tongue as a motor organ is working. Tongue is also a sense organ and also a motor organ. Can you control your tongue? Yes. Motor organ. What is that? I can regulate and control my speech. Where I have to speak, I speak out. And where I have not to speak, I keep my tongue in check. Look at the ears. Ears are always open. By default, it hears anything and everything. Eyes. Eyes, yes, we have control. I close my eyes. See that? So why masters have created the first principle? To hear it. I do not know. Let me know it by listening to a teacher. But if that listening is happening in the mind, pure mind, you grasp it, you absorb it, and it goes into the second step. That is why we have been talking about purifying the mind. So that whatever is heard comes here, because the mind is not obstructing, and then it goes down into the heart, and from the heart it goes down into the hands in terms of thought, speech, and action. See that? So now understand the first step. Listen to know and understand the principle. Take an example. Peace is my essential nature. Happiness is within me. Love is within me. Wisdom is within me. It is hiding. It is hiding because of the impurity of the mind, habits, impulsiveness, instinctiveness. It is not that at a particular age we have an instinct and the impulse and the habit. It can be present at any age. So the first step, listen to know and understand the principle. First thing. At that time of listening, keep your tongue under the palate, upper palate, touching it, so that you are aware that this tongue should not start thinking something else, because we may find a subtle movement coming from the past habit. So, listening has two parts. First, listen to the principles, remember it so that you can recollect it. And by default, we are listening all kinds of things from our near and the dear ones by virtue of our habit. And the moment we hear something negative, the mind from the past habit triggers and it is ready to react. But the first reaction is through the speech. So you are already keeping the tongue under the upper palate. You'll feel the vibration there, some sense of reaction there, and it can be easily taken care of. Because the moment you become aware, even you heard something negative, you are not allowing the mind to express, to think in the mind before it converts into a speech outside and creates a turmoil. anything that we listen, we don't allow the tongue, we don't allow the mind to trigger the past impression, we don't allow the tongue to express it, so the action will not take place and we are able to take care of our life. That is the first thing. Understand that. So what will happen? On one hand, you are listening to their principles. So look at the principle. Peace is your essential nature. The mind is of two types, pure and impure. The impure mind is caused by the desire and the projection. The pure mind is devoid of it. Happiness is my essential nature. My real nature is of the nature of permanent peace, happiness, love, and wisdom. You see that we have learned a lot of principles, one after the other, and you have experienced a tremendous change. At the same time, we also listen to the nasty things coming from outside. So first, we have to absorb these principles, allow it to enter into the head with the clarity and descend down into the heart, and we have to pull back those thoughts which creates the ripples and the impressions. Second step. In the first step, you are a listener. Whether I am speaking to you or anyone else speaking to you. So, when I speak to you, I am speaking on behalf of teachings of these masters. I have nothing. I am already pointing you out what the masters have taught us. So the master is acting as a bridge between you and me. So I'm always free in that respect. Why? Because what I'm teaching or expressing coming from the teachings of that Eastern wisdom. Similarly, you have to be free. You have to be free when you are listening to others, near and the dear ones, relations, strangers, employees, friends, and the foes. You are totally free. Means what? Listening with the freedom. Means what? That listening from them is not being dictated by the past impression. So one small tip and it will have a deeper impact in your life. Now the second principle. Second point that you should follow in your daily life. When you are not a listener, when you are not a listener, you are a speaker. Means when you have to express yourself through the thought, through speech. That ego sense is expressed through the speech. For a civilized person, and that ego is expressed through the crime, violence, duality, conflict, inaction, through the uncivilized people. We are fairly civilized people. What to speak? always ready to express these principles according to the situations, according to the people present before you. You see, someone says, or talks, or gossips, that person is making me crazy. He spoke to me. He spoke nasty to me. Now see that. As a speaker, you know that no one can be responsible for your suffering or others' suffering. Each one is responsible for one's suffering in the life and one's happiness. So take an example. What to speak? There are options before you. If you have a disliking for the person who spoke nastily, then your mind gets attached and the mind is ready to speak against that person. So as a speaker, we should not. Instead, I see that when I sit myself with eyes closed, even you need not to talk about that you are practicing meditation. When I sit with my eyes closed, I find calmness is within. And that calmness cannot be disturbed by anyone outside. Just think about it. So you are speaking, you are expressing your thoughts. Don't talk about that you are a teacher. Don't claim you are a teacher, but express yourself. Don't stop expressing in a rightful manner based on these principles when living with the near and the dear ones, and they are ready to listen or discuss instead of a gossip. Start expressing yourself, your experiences that you have gained over a year of practice. You are sure you have experienced the change. So express that like a third person. Don't create a burden. Don't become a teacher in the beginning. That is the second principle. Speak, become a seeker, express yourself. That is what I do. Couple came to me. But in fact, the wife understood what she was learning from me and she wanted her husband also to learn. And I warned her. If he is not ready, don't bring him. There is no need. No, I have paid the money. Forget about that you have paid the money for my session for your husband. If he is not ready, don't bring him. You continue the practice. So first 6 months she practiced everything. And because when she started expressing herself totally in a different way based on these principles to her husband, then one day her husband, after 6 months, asked her, "Who is that guy? What you are learning from him? I want to meet." And there we met all the three together. And the journey is still continuing. That is the power of these principles. Not only meditation, But the meditation reveals the knowledge of the reality. And when your mind reflects the reality in thought, speech, and action, nothing to fear in this world. The ego is replaced by the higher principle. Higher principle means the real self, and the real self means the peace, happiness, love, wisdom. I'm reminding you again, the first principle, listen to these principles. Listening with a pure mind, with a focused attention, so that that knowledge with a conviction enters into your heart. When it enters into the heart, your heart is speaking to the others, not your ego. So don't never stop expressing yourself in these principles as a third person. Oh, this is what I have understood. Because if you become a teacher, near and the dear ones will repel you, will fire you, will cause you more pain. Because you are attaching these principles with your ego. So first principle, a listener. Second principle, you are a speaker in third person about these principles. You see, otherwise what is going to happen? Your near and dear one comes to you and he or she says you are crazy. The mind triggers the past impression and then you are ready to fight. So, we should be a speaker, the active speaker in third person, not claiming that you are a teacher, but expressing these principles in your daily life. Clear? Now comes the third step. What is third step? When there is no speaker, when there is no listener, then the mind is engaged in all kinds of past impressions. You are sitting alone, no speaker, no listener. You are not listening to me and my talks. And there is no speaker because there is no one present. In that moment, internally, keep listening and singing in the mind these principles. Recall any principle in the mind to get rid of that subconscious mind which triggers these impressions again and again and causes you the anxiety and the reaction and the resistance. So when there is no speaker in you, when there is no listener in you, then what you do? To minimize the influx of the past thought that enters into your mind uninvited, you start recalling, remembering, recollecting those principles. Or, the third part, when there is no speaker and no listener, visualize the steps that has brought you the deeper experience. Recall them, recollect them, remember them, revisit them. So, in the first step as a listener, you are not using the tongue. As a speaker, you are using the tongue based on the principles. You act as... In the third, you are not using the tongue. You are not using the ears. You recall. You do the practice. That is what I mean by the regular practice. When there is no listener, no speaker, practice regularly to deepen the experience, to change this mind. The fourth principle: there is no listener, there is no speaker, you are not doing their practice, but the mind is still active. You see that? Have you ever realized that, have you ever experienced in your life that your mind is relatively free and you are sitting in a restroom and you start singing, you become a bathroom singer? You are in a kitchen cooking the tea, mind is preparing the tea, and your mind is totally free. Mind is dancing inside. It remembers and recollects a song or a dance, and you start taking those steps of a dance. That is our fourth step. Whenever you are working in the kitchen or in the restroom or doing anything, when the mind is relatively free, start singing these principles. How do you remember this song? You never thought of it, because the mind has created a very deep impression in your mind about that song, about that dance, and the mind visualizes it inside, and it takes action through the body, through the tongue. Same way. Apply the same principle. You are cooking, you are preparing and cooking in the kitchen. Oh, peace is my essential nature. Let me act in the kitchen in peace. I'm in the restroom, so what is that? Oh, peace is my essential nature. Om Shanti 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 Shantoham. You are invoking those principles. And these 4 steps, if you practice, if you apply in your life, even for a week, you will experience the tremendous change, the lightness in the body, calmness in the mind, clarity in the intellect. You are ready to play with the principles in your daily life with the people around you. You need not to think even if you have an unripe ego. Journey in the life will become a smooth ride. You'll find the change. Not only that, you will find an opportunity everywhere. So whether you are a listener, whether you are a speaker, whether you are not a speaker and a listener, and when you are living your life with daily chores, you introduce these principles. That is the way to bring about a total change in your life. You have those earlier talks in the lessons that you have learned. Based on that, I'm speaking to you today. Physical suffering, mental suffering, suffering due to the natural calamities are the 3 causes of pain and the suffering in our life. We suffer from some illness in the body and then we get scared. We get scared? Body gets scared or mind gets scared? Mind gets scared. Look at this. COVID-19, the natural calamities, including the flood and etc. But out of the 3 suffering, the percentage of a mental suffering is 90%. Physical suffering, I have a problem of diabetes or asthma or other stuff, and I'm undergoing a treatment. Natural calamities we can prevent, flood, COVID-19. We have to prevent ourselves. We cannot take over the nature until a suitable method is discovered. In case of a flood, the dam, in case of a COVID, we are looking for a vaccine in the near future. But there is no vaccine for the mind. Suffering comes from outside. The mind attaches with it. When you say, I am suffering, this is also ego. This is a highly destructive ego. Some dear and the near one says, you are crazy. I am suffering. Why he told me? Why she said this? So the ego takes over. Understand, this suffering causes other ego in our life. The ego sense that I am suffering causes craziness, laziness, obsession, reaction, fight, anxiety, and we destroy our own life. So remember the second principle we talked about. You are a speaker. Whatever you speak, whatever your tongue contains is the Eastern wisdom, is the peace, love, and the happiness. And before that, your mind knows these principles should be expressed through the tongue, means the speech and the action. I believe when you meet your son, you know, I love you, honey. David, you meet, and you express, I love you, honey. Your daughter, your other near and the dear ones, your mom. Do you ever say that I love myself? So the moment you say, I love myself, start thinking the principle that true nature is made up of a love. Where there is love, there is no ego. So all the ego sense, or you can say the desires, or we say the reactions, or we say the pain and the sufferings, lives in us at 3 levels. First level, sense organ. Second level, mind. Third level, intellect. Which one is more powerful? The intellect. If the intellect is intact, means the wisdom is there, supported by the principles of the Eastern wisdom that you have learned over a year, and we have understood that they should be applied in 4 steps, then what happens? The intellect can take over the mind and the sense organ. Every master says, to help the intellect to preserve and store, to live with those principles, we have to apply the 4 steps as I explained you above. Now comes the magic. What is that magic? Magic of understanding. The great master says, Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagrati sanyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyati muni. First understand in a literal, just a translation. A waking state for a non-meditator. First, what is non-meditator? The one who does not practice meditation. What is the waking state for that non-meditator? It will blow your mind with that understanding. Keep that in your mind. What did I say? The waking state of a non-meditator and the waking state of a meditator are totally two different things. Really? Waking state is the waking state? No. The waking state of a non-meditator is likes and dislikes, pain and the pleasure, conflict, confusion, stress and the suffering. And the waking state of a meditator, he lives beyond all these dualities and opposites. His mind never recalls the incident happened yesterday, in the past. He recalls only that I'm living in peace, happiness, and wisdom. Are you getting it? The waking state of a meditator, when he or she wakes up in the morning and the mind says, you are upset, you make that responsible to the sleep where the past impressions were moving that caused you upset when you woke up. What should you do? Recall those principles. Understand what is the magic? The waking state of a meditator is always good, full of wisdom, love, beyond likes and dislikes. Waking state of a non-meditator, he or she wakes up in the morning and his mind says, I felt too much of stress because someone told me nasty words. Not interested. For a meditator. Interested for non-meditator. Change yourself from today. Meditator never sleeps in a waking state. Now see that, let me explain it in a different way. Meditator never sleeps in a waking state. Means what? You're not carried away by any thoughts of blame, complaint, reaction, pain, suffering, resistance. So means what? Those who never practice meditation, even they wake up, they are sleeping. Why they are sleeping? They are carried away by the likes and dislikes, pain and the pleasure, reaction and resistance. Their mind is constantly thinking about others. For a meditator, you are constantly thinking, contemplating and reflecting about your true nature. Non-meditator always sleeps. One sleep when he is sleeping in the night, and the other sleeping, he is sleeping in the waking state. The mind reminds him about a person and he says blame, complaint and reaction. That builds up the ego. Krishna, the great master. Non-meditator always sleeps means agenda in his mind, in the intellect is blame, complaint, reaction, possessive thinking about others, about the event, about what I have to do. Non-meditator always sleeps because he lives the life of attachment, detachment, anxiety, anger, hesitation, who is seeking pleasure and claiming happiness in the world outside. They are always running. They are always running. Do not find time. What their mind is doing, causing suffering. Make others responsible for happiness. That doer in me, let me do something in order to secure happiness from outside, is a silent ego. Because if I do it, I will bring the happiness from outside. So what is the magic? Non-meditator always sleeps. You are a meditator, you don't sleep. And a meditator, one who lives in the world, but beyond the world, in dispassion. Did you understand? I talked about Shreyas, path of the Shreyas and the path of the Preyas. Shreyas means what is right and good. Preyas means what I like and what is pleasant to me. So a non-meditator always sleeps because he follows the path of the Preyas. What I like, what is pleasant to me. I look at mom, what I like. Mom, you should never be nasty to me. But that is her nature. What should we do? Can you stop her tongue? Can you stop her expressing her own thoughts? Thank you, Mom. Continue expressing. You are a listener. Not only you are a listener to me, but you are a listener to your mom. Thank you, Mom. Say a little more. What do you have to speak? No, nothing to speak. Let her express. Calm down. And once she has spoken, she finished. Apply the second principle of a speaker. Mom, when I look at myself and I close my eyes, I sit silently, I find that I am responsible for my peace and happiness, and just stop it. You have spoken clearly, not as a teacher, but just you express your thought. She may react. You are ready. How you are ready? You are ready to be a listener. You are a listener because you are a meditator. So a meditator is always awakened. What you are awakened to? That nothing outside can make me happy in pain. Let her speak. You enjoy. You play a role of your daughter. And see what is going to happen. So those who follow the path of the Shreyas, even if they are highly intelligent, wise, but they follow the life of likes and dislikes, attachment and detachment, and the ego worships attachment and detachment. Because if ego does not worship attachment and detachment, there is no ego at all. So there you are a meditator. You live the life of the Shreyas, what is right and good. You instantly recognize and realize and become aware. Oh, my mom is pushing me to the attachment and detachment. This is not my cup of tea. Internally you think, you become aware, finished. How simple it is. It will be simple by following the 4 steps, where seeker is always awake when non-seeker sleeps. You are a seeker. Seeker is always awake. Means what? Okay, now mom is talking about her own problem through reaction, resistance. You are awake. You are a seeker. You're not sleeping. What is the meaning of the sleeping? You are carried away by the likes and dislikes. So what happens? You are a perfect listener. The way you are listening to me, you are listening to your mom. So mom, in the state of reaction and anxiety, becomes you're another teacher, the second teacher. What she teaches? Keep the tongue tight, no speech, no expression to her reaction and anger and hesitation, or for anyone. But internally you are calm. You don't allow those reactions to enter into you because you are a seeker. Because you follow the path of the Shreyas, what is right and good. Because you are aware, because you are calm. Why? For the seeker, any blame, complaint, reaction, anger, hesitation is nothing but it is sleeping. Don't sleep in a waking state. Ego will never touch you. Ego will never touch you. Just see that. Ego will never touch you. The same master says, the one whose mind is empty of thoughts created by likes and dislikes, attachment and detachment, always succeeds. That is the greatest magic. Listener, without any preferences, the way you are listening to me. So you become a listener whosoever speaks, near and the dear ones, friends and the foes, David and Mom. Then you are a speaker. You are a speaker who is awake. You are not a speaker. You are not a listener. You absorb yourself into daily meditation practice. What about the other time when you are cooking in the kitchen, going to the restroom, sitting in your living room alone? Start singing those principles. Become a bathroom singer. That's an pointer that whenever the mind is free, recall, remember, speak. You are living in your house alone. Speak loudly. Sing it. One young guy I spoke about these 4 principles. He is studying medicine in the Midwest. Quite young, very intelligent. So he said, I remain alone for about 8 to 9 hours in the house when mom and dad goes out. I said, start singing. Peace is my essential nature, and keep looking inside. Happiness is within me. While cooking, happiness is with, and he did it for about, young people, their mind is quite clear and pure, and he started singing. And next week he called me and we had a beautiful session. He said everything changed in my life. And now what happens, even when my dad and mom comes and complains, my mind sings mentally. He said, my essential nature. So one day, after a few weeks, Dad said, what happened to you? You don't react. And he told me that at that time, when the dad asked him, Why, what happened to you? Even at that moment, his mind was thinking, happiness is my essential nature. That is the way to get this crazy ego down. Thank you very much.